I'm Sabrina Brooks, 35 years old, a software engineer who's carried my family for years. That night, I hosted my parents' 35th wedding anniversary gala in a Sacramento restaurant, pouring my heart into every detail for 50 guests. Then my mom grabbed the mic. "You're so selfish," she snapped, "because I wouldn't buy my brother a Tesla." The room went silent. Eyes burned into me. My brothers smirked, basking in her praise while I stood humiliated. I'd bought them a three-bedroom house worth $450,000, paid their bills, and this was my thanks. My mom forgot one critical detail: that house was mine. I gripped my fork, forcing a smile. My best friend's nod across the table fueling my resolve. A fire sparked inside me. They forgot who held the deed, but they'd face a truth they couldn't ignore soon enough. If you've ever been betrayed by those you've sacrificed for, smash that like button, subscribe, and stay tuned to see how I turn their world upside down. To understand why that night broke me, let me tell you about the years I was my family's ATM. I'm a software engineer in Sacramento. Fresh out of college, I landed a job at a tech firm building apps that fueled startups. The grind was relentless. 60-hour weeks, late nights, untangling code deadlines that never let up. But it paid off. By my late 20s, I was earning $150,000 a year. I didn't blow my money on luxuries. I poured it into my family. My parents were in a tight spot. My dad, Gerald Brooks, relied on a modest pension from his old bank job, barely enough for basics. My mom, Frances Brooks, was a homemaker with no income. I wanted them to live without worry, to have a home they could be proud of. At 26, I made a decision that felt monumental. I bought my parents a three-bedroom house in suburban Sacramento worth $450,000. It took nearly all my savings, but when my mom walked through the door, her eyes lit up, and she pulled me into a tight hug. My dad gripped my hand, his voice thick with gratitude, saying it was a gift they'd never forget. That moment filled me with pride, like I'd given them a new start. I thought it would bind us closer. Then there was my brother, Bryce Brooks, 5 years younger than me. At 22, he decided he was meant to be an influencer chasing fame on Instagram. He leased a sleek downtown apartment rent at $2,000 a month, and I covered it, believing his promises that it was just until he made it. His feed was a showcase of extravagance: beach trips, tailored outfits, high-end gadgets. I funded those lifestyle expenses, telling myself it was temporary, that he'd build a career. But his posts got more likes than job offers, and every month he'd text, "Sis, I'm short again." I'd send the money, pushing down my growing unease, convincing myself family meant sacrifice. The hardest part wasn't the cash, it was feeling invisible. At family dinners, my mom would scroll through my brother's Instagram, her face glowing with pride. "Bryce is going to be a star," she'd say, her voice brimming with excitement. My dad would nod, murmuring about his big plans. I'd share my own wins, like spearheading a project that saved my company millions, and get a distracted, "That's nice, dear," before the conversation swung back to my brother. My efforts, my sacrifices seemed to vanish in their eyes. I'd sit there swallowing the ache, feeling like I was just the one who paid the bills. I gave up more than money. I gave up time, dreams, freedom. I worked overtime instead of taking vacations, passed on promotions that would have meant moving away, all to stay close for my family. My own apartment was a simple one-bedroom, while my brother lived like a celebrity on my dime. I told myself this was what love looked like, putting them first. But each overlooked sacrifice carved a deeper wound, a resentment I buried deep. My best friend, Erin Hayes, saw it all. A colleague at the tech firm, she was my confidant, always ready to listen. One night over coffee, she cut straight to the truth. "Sabrina, they're taking you for granted," she said, her tone gentle but firm. "You're giving everything, and they're giving nothing back." I brushed it off, saying family was complicated, but her words hit home. She'd point out how my mom's calls often ended with a subtle ask for money, how my brother never said thank you. "You're not their bank," she'd say, her voice sharp with concern. I'd laugh it off, but the truth was sinking in. Reflecting now, I see how much I gave. That house, those payments for my brother's lifestyle, they added up to years of my life, my dreams deferred. My mom's fixation on my brother's future blinded her to my contributions. My dad's quiet agreement let it continue. My brother took without hesitation, as if my role was to serve. Aaron's warnings were a wake-up call, a spark that made me question why I was giving so much for so little. Those years of silent sacrifices built a strength I didn't yet recognize, a resolve that would soon change everything. 3 weeks before the gala, I stood at a crossroads that could change my life. A women-led tech startup had offered me a chance to invest $50,000, a bold move that stirred excitement in me. It was risky, but it promised a future where my choices mattered. I sat in my Sacramento apartment, poring over their pitch deck, envisioning a path that was mine alone. I had the means thanks to years of hard work, but it would mean stretching my savings thin. For the first time, I felt ready to prioritize myself to build something beyond my family's endless demands. Then my brother upended everything. He'd racked up a credit card bill of $10,000, splurging on designer clothes and luxury accessories to boost his influencer persona. A creditor's call tipped me off, assuming I'd cover it. My stomach churned. I dialed him, my voice tight. "How could you be so careless?" I demanded, pacing my living room. His reply was infuriatingly nonchalant. "Sis, you can afford it." He said, his tone smug, like my money was his to spend. I gripped my phone, rage flaring. It wasn't just the debt, it was his expectation that I'd fix his mistakes without question. I hung up, my mind in turmoil. I'd spent years supporting his ambitions, thinking it was what sisters did. But this crossed a line. My laptop sat open, the startup's proposal glowing on the screen. That $50,000 was my ticket to a new chapter, not another bailout for my brother's recklessness. His entitlement wasn't just a bill, it was a challenge to my right to dream. The next day, my mom called. I knew what was coming. "Your brother's in trouble," she said, her voice heavy with expectation. "He needs you to pay that bill. Family helps. Family." Her words hit like a slap. I tried to share my plans, how the startup could be my future. She cut me off. "You've got the money, Sabrina. Don't be selfish." That word selfish seared through me, turning my years of giving into a fault. I'd sacrificed so much, and now I was selfish for wanting something of my own. My voice shook, but stayed firm. "Mom, I can't keep doing this. I have my own goals." She sighed, like I was the one failing her. "Think about your brother," she said, then hung up. I stood frozen, phone in hand, anger surging. Her demand wasn't about the money, it was about keeping me as their safety net. For the first time, I saw it clearly. To them, I was a resource, not a person with dreams of her own. I called my best friend, needing to let it out. She listened as I spilled my frustration about the startup, my brother's debt, my mom's guilt trip. "You're not their cash machine," she said, her voice steady. "You've given enough. Choose yourself." Her words struck like lightning. I'd always believed family meant putting them first, but now a spark of defiance ignited. Why was my brother's extravagance my burden? Why did my dreams have to wait? Over the next few days, I wrestled with my anger. The startup wasn't just an investment, it was a symbol of my right to a life beyond their needs. My brother never asked about me, only my wallet. My mom used guilt to keep me in line. I wasn't ready to confront them, but something had shifted. I was done being their fallback. That spark of defiance burned quietly, a clarity that my worth wasn't tied to their demands. The night of the gala was meant to showcase my worth, but it became a breaking point. I'd poured my heart into planning my parents' 35th anniversary celebration, a grand event in a midtown Sacramento garden. 50 guests filled the space, their laughter mingling with the soft strum of a live jazz band. Tables were adorned with gourmet dishes, seared scallops, truffle risotto, and artisanal desserts, each detail chosen to honor my family. Fairy lights twinkled above, casting a warm glow over the lush greenery. I moved through the crowd, greeting friends and relatives, my smile masking the tension I'd carried for weeks. I wanted this night to be perfect, a moment to prove I could hold us together. Halfway through the evening, my brother stood up, glass in hand, drawing eyes. His voice carried a practiced charm as he spoke to the crowd. "I'm working on elevating my brand," he said, flashing a grin. "A Tesla would take it to the next level, but someone's holding out on me." He glanced my way, his smirk sharp, and the guests chuckled, thinking it a joke. My stomach twisted. He was putting me on the spot, pressuring me in front of everyone to fund his latest whim, a car worth $100,000. I forced a laugh, but my grip tightened on my wine glass, the weight of his entitlement pressing down. Then my mom took the microphone. The crowd hushed, expecting a heartfelt toast. Instead, her voice rang out sharp and accusing. "Sabrina's too selfish to help her brother," she said, her eyes locked on me. "She's got the means, but she won't buy him that car." The words echoed through the garden, slicing through the festive air. Gasps rippled across the tables. Faces turned toward me, some curious, others judging. My brother leaned back in his chair, his smirk widening, basking in the attention. My cheeks burned, but I kept my head high, refusing to let them see me crack. I picked up my fork, focusing on the plate in front of me, and took a slow bite of risotto. The act was deliberate, a shield against the humiliation. Across the table, my best friend caught my eye. Her subtle nod was a lifeline, a silent reminder that I wasn't alone. I swallowed hard, the food tasteless, as the chatter around me resumed. My mom returned to her seat, oblivious to the wound she'd inflicted. The jazz band played on, but the melody felt hollow. Inside, a storm was brewing, not of tears, but of resolve. For years, I'd been their anchor, giving everything to keep them afloat. But that night, as the weight of their words settled, something snapped. My brother's public jab wasn't just about a car, it was a demand for me to stay in my role, to keep funding his dreams. My mom's accusation wasn't just a scolding, it was a declaration that my worth lay in what I could give, not who I was. I'd spent years believing family meant sacrifice, but this was different. This was disrespect laid bare for all to see. I kept my composure through the rest of the dinner, nodding at guests making small talk. But my mind was racing. I thought of the startup I'd nearly invested in, the chance I'd almost taken for myself. I thought of the countless times I'd said yes to their demands only to be met with indifference. My best friend's nod stayed with me, a spark of strength. I wasn't just hurt, I was done being their doormat. That moment under the fairy lights marked a shift. I'd given enough. It was time to stand up for myself. That night, alone in my apartment, I opened my laptop and faced the truth. I launched Google Sheets, my hands shaking as I began logging the money I'd spent on my family over the years. I listed my brother's rent for his downtown loft, his wardrobe upgrades, and countless other expenses he'd racked up. I deliberately left out the cost of the house I'd bought for my parents, as it dwarfed everything else. The total came to more than $150,000 across 5 years. Each line in the spreadsheet was a piece of my life I'd given away, thinking it was my role as a daughter and sister. The gala's sting had broken that belief, and these numbers were my wake-up call. I wasn't just supporting them, I'd been enabling their demands. I dialed my best friend, needing her perspective. "I can't keep doing this," I said, my voice firm despite the knot in my stomach. "They've taken too much." She didn't waver. "That house is yours, Sabrina. You bought it. Take it back." Her words fanned the spark of defiance I'd felt at the gala. She pushed me to reclaim the 3-bedroom house in suburban Sacramento, not just as property, but as a symbol of my boundaries. It wasn't about cutting them off, it was about standing up for myself. I hung up, her resolve fueling mine, ready to take action. The next day, I contacted John Reed, a lawyer recommended by a colleague. Over the phone, his tone was steady and professional. "Your name's on the deed," he said. "You have full legal grounds to initiate eviction." I laid out the situation, how I'd bought the house for my parents, how their expectations had grown unchecked. John explained the process, a formal notice followed by legal steps to reclaim the property. It sounded overwhelming, but his clarity grounded me. By the call's end, I'd hired him to start the paperwork. The decision felt heavy, but right, a step toward breaking free. I leaned back, my mind drifting to the day I'd purchased that house worth $450,000. I'd insisted on keeping my name on the deed, a safeguard for my investment, never thinking I'd need to enforce it. That choice now felt like a gift to my future self. I recalled my mom's initial joy when she saw the house, a warmth long replaced by entitlement. I thought of my brother, whose demands had escalated without a shred of gratitude. The gala's humiliation lingered, but it sharpened my focus. This wasn't revenge, it was self-preservation. The spreadsheet glowed on my screen, a ledger of my misplaced loyalty. Each entry marked a moment I'd chosen their needs over my own, believing it proved my love. But love shouldn't demand my erasure. With my best friend's words and John's guidance, I felt a surge of confidence. I felt freedom within reach. 3 days after the gala, I opened Instagram and saw my mom's post. I switched to Facebook, where her words hit harder. In a lengthy post, my mom called me selfish and a betrayer of family, claiming I'd turned my back on those who raised me. The post had dozens of likes and comments from her friends, some calling me ungrateful, others pitying her for having such a daughter. My chest tightened as I scrolled through the vitriol, each comment a jab from strangers who didn't know my side. I'd poured years into supporting them, yet here I was, painted as the villain on a public stage. Then I saw my brother's Instagram video. Standing in his sleek apartment, he spoke to his thousands of followers, his voice heavy with feigned hurt. "My sister abandoned me when I needed her most," he said, pausing for effect. "She's got the means, but she chooses herself." He urged his audience to call her out, and they did. Comments flooded in, accusing me of cruelty and greed. My phone buzzed with notifications, his video racking up views. His words weren't just a plea, they were a calculated move to shame me into submission. The betrayal deepened when I saw my Aunt Barbara and cousin Stephen had shared my mom's post. Barbara added her own comment: "Some kids forget who gave them everything." Stephen chimed in, calling me ungrateful for refusing to help my brother. Their words stung, not just for their harshness, but because they were family people I'd once trusted. The public pile-on felt like a coordinated attack, each share amplifying the narrative that I was the problem. I stared at my screen, the weight of their judgment settling in. My phone lit up with messages from friends, some concerned, others curious about the family drama. One asked, "Is it true you cut them off?" Another wrote, "What's going on with your mom's post?" Each question felt like a fresh-cut proof that their smear was spreading beyond their circle. I wanted to fire back, to tell the world how much I'd given, years of support, a house my own dreams sidelined. But I stopped myself. Responding would only fuel their fire, dragging me into their public circus. Instead, I thought of John, my lawyer. I'd spoken to him the day before, and his advice was clear. Let the eviction notice do the talking. The paperwork was moving forward, a formal step to reclaim the house I'd bought for my parents. I'd made that choice to protect myself, and now it was my anchor. Their posts and videos were loud, but the legal process was louder. I closed my laptop, choosing silence over their chaos. I stayed silent, letting the eviction notice speak for me. 10 days after the gala, the eviction notice was sent, and my mom's name lit up my phone. Her voice was sharp, laced with fury. "How dare you send that notice?" she snapped, referencing the eviction papers for the house I'd bought. "And after those posts, you're humiliating us?" She demanded I retract the notice, claiming I was tearing the family apart. I took a deep breath, my heart steady. "You have two choices," I said calmly. "Leave the house, or we'll settle it in court with my financial records." My words hung in the air, unyielding. She gasped, then hung up, her anger no match for my resolve. 2 days later, my mom, my dad, my brother, my Aunt Barbara, and my cousin Stephen showed up at my Sacramento apartment. They stood in my living room, their faces a mix of guilt and defiance. My mom spoke first, her tone softer but insincere. "We're sorry if we upset you," she said, "but family sticks together." My brother chimed in, mumbling about misunderstandings. Barbara and Stephen echoed vague regrets, their words hollow. My dad stayed silent, avoiding my gaze. Their apologies felt like a ploy, a last attempt to keep me in line. I listened unmoved, their presence only solidifying my decision. I reached into my drawer and pulled out a check for $10,000, my final gesture. "This is the last thing I'll give," I said, handing it to my mom. "Take it and leave my life." Their eyes widened, but I held firm. "I've given enough, more than $100,000 over the years, not counting the house. I'm done." My voice was steady, each word a release. They hesitated, then took the check, their silence deafening as they left. The door closed and a weight lifted from my shoulders. Within weeks, I sold the house for $550,000, a profit from its original $450,000 purchase. I poured the funds into the women-led tech startup I'd considered months ago, a decision that felt like reclaiming my future. With the sale complete, I moved into a sleek downtown loft, my new space, a symbol of my independence. For the first time, I lived for myself, unburdened by their demands. I was finally free. My family, meanwhile, struggled. My dad's pension of $30,000 a year barely covered their new rental, a modest apartment far from the suburban comfort they'd known. Their social media posts, once weapons against me, backfired. Friends and followers turned on them, criticizing their entitlement after learning I'd funded their lives for years. My mom's accusations and my brother's videos became their own undoing, leaving them isolated in their financial and social fallout. This journey taught me a vital lesson. Family doesn't mean sacrificing your self-worth. Set boundaries and choose yourself. I'm grateful to everyone who's followed this story to its end. Your support means the world. Please share your thoughts. What would you have done in my place? Your perspectives inspire me to keep moving forward.